On va poursuivre maintenant avec notre intervenant d'honneur. Vous savez que chaque année maintenant, depuis quelque temps, on fait intervenir un acteur d'un autre pays pour voir un petit peu ce qui se pratique ailleurs. Et depuis 3-4 ans maintenant, on invite des gens qui viennent s'exprimer généralement en anglais. Ce sera le cas pour notre intervenant et je vous demande d'accueillir Nico Mulder, qui nous arrive donc d'Amsterdam. Nico, you can come. Nico, we're very glad to welcome you here.
Thank you.
And stage is yours for about 40 minutes. And we can take some questions at the end of your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Good morning all. Thank you for the invitation, Ludo. Happy to be back in France. I visited the southern part of France a lot when I was like this high. I went to Bordeaux, to Sérian, Perpignan, Toulouse, Nice, but I've never been to Po. So my apologies for the people of Po, but I'm very happy to be here. Fresh air, beautiful views, so I am very curious about the next 2 days. In the upcoming 40 minutes, I will tell you about the story of Amsterdam, how we strengthened the city, how we developed the city from about 15 years ago up until now. So it's a bit of a challenge, I must say. Ludo asked me to present this story in 40 minutes, so I'm going to try to summarize 15 years in 40 minutes.
You will have an hour of workshop later to go deeper. You know?
Yes, that's right, okay. First of all, title of this presentation, How to Manage Success. But let me begin with introducing myself. There's some differences in the slides.
Oh,
so I'm hoping everything is correct. I have to improvise a little bit, but that's okay. Anyways, I started working for Amsterdam about 10 years ago. Working there as a marketing manager. And the first big goal was basically to put Amsterdam back on the map again, because things were a bit different back then in Amsterdam. I will elaborate more about this later on. But nowadays, it's not about putting Amsterdam back on the map again. It's about finding new solutions. And this is something that I've been doing for the past 5 years for Amsterdam. But more so also for different cities and different destinations all around the world. And I had the pleasure and the honor to work together with Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, a few months ago for his new initiative called Travelist, in which we work together with Visa, TripAdvisor, but also Skyscanner and Ctrip. All about working towards new solutions regarding sustainable tourism. Sustainable tourism not only for urban environments like Amsterdam, but also rural parts in the world. So nowadays, it's about a different thing. Within this video, basically, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Within the video, you can basically see our philosophy of marketing and branding our city. It's not only about tourism. We see inhabitants in the video. We see people doing business, people studying. It's about import, export. It's about arts and culture. It's also about tourism. We like to see marketing and branding of cities or destinations from a holistic perspective. It's not only about tourism. Tourism is something that we can use, that we can grow from, that we can learn from. But it all needs to contribute to a better place to work, to study, and to live in. So let me bring you back a little, about 15 years ago, 2004. Why did we start with marketing and branding Amsterdam? In 2002, we saw in Amsterdam there was a huge competition going on in Europe between capitals in Europe regarding tourism. And Amsterdam was really having a bad reputation back then. A reputation of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I don't have to tell you about that, perhaps.
Literally a bad reputation?
Well,
for everyone, you know?
a little. I always say when I travel abroad, I am from Amsterdam, I see the eyes of people twinkling. And I don't think that's a business twinkle. So yes, it's. But back then it was really bad, and we saw also that this was affecting the image and the power of the city. People were moving out of the city. Some parts of the city were a bit run down, basically. Also, one of the biggest factors and assets that was wrong back then was that we saw many marketing agencies, many slogans being used for the city. So I think we were a sports capital, we were a festival capital, capital of culture. Basically, Amsterdam was everything. But if you're everything, you're also nothing. So it was also about choosing. And the city and lots of companies back then decided to work more closely together in shaping a stronger holistic proposition about the city. A proposition towards inhabitants, but also towards visitors and businesses. From that holistic perspective. The municipality, City Hall, really made huge investments in infrastructure, in cultural institutions, but also regarding all the accommodations that we have in the city, a higher level. So there were huge investments regarding the quality of basically the product of the city. And finally, in 2004, the finalization of one city brand was there, and that became, of course, Amsterdam. That city brand was invented already 15 years ago. And the question back then was, of course, how do you organize marketing and branding of your city? Do you do it with your DMO, or like we had back then, there were dozens of marketing boards and agencies. There was a cultural marketing board, there was a business marketing board, convention, tourism, investments, all marketing boards, but not really cooperating extensively or optimally. And I always use this metaphor of all these marketing boards singing beautiful songs about the city, but they were all different songs, and they weren't really matching up towards the same musical. They weren't fitting in the same musical. So it was a cluttered field, a cluttered image of Amsterdam. And all these marketing boards, they merged back then into Amsterdam marketing. And that became the holistic city marketing organization for Amsterdam and its metropolitan area. So up until now, our mission statement of the company is to make a contribution towards a livable, attractive, and prosperous city and Amsterdam area. So we do not only work for the city, as you could see in the video as well, we also market the beach. And well, I know from experience the beaches in France are more beautiful, but we do have a beach. And we see many people from Germany, for instance, or Scandinavia or other parts in Europe visiting Holland just to go to the beach. And the beach of Amsterdam is only 25 minutes away from the city center. So that's pretty impressive, and not a lot of people know that. So we work for the full Amsterdam area. I go into details about this later on. But within the marketing and branding mission statement, it is about inhabitants, visitors, and businesses again. So the last few years, the last bullet that you can see here, that was added to our mission statement. Because in the past years, we can see a huge rise of people moving into the city, being inhabitants, but also more people visiting the city, and more companies again moving into the city. So with Amsterdam being such a pretty, well, it's a pretty small city, it's becoming hugely popular nowadays. It's also getting crowded a lot. So for us, marketing and branding the city, the main KPI isn't the economic impact anymore. We have chosen different KPIs. And I'm going into details about this also later on. Just to show you again our slide of target groups. And this also shows you how holistic we perceive marketing and branding of our city. We start with the needs and the interests of our residents at first, but also look, of course, towards a optimal customer experience for our companies and for our visitors. And basically, that's also what we believe is essential. When we started about 15 years ago, the main reason and the main thing for us was to shape that DNA from the bottom up. So what we did is we had a 2-year-long discussion, research about our DNA. 2 years, that's how long it takes when you go and cooperate. And when you indulge yourself with all opinions of the city. So what we did is on this quest for our DNA, we found out that in Amsterdam it's about innovation, creativity, and a spirit of commerce. And yes, of course, you would need a beautiful city brand, but of course, as you know all as DMOs or employees for DMOs, a brand or a logo is not everything that we can do. Of course, we need far more. We know logos like this all around the world. Only Lyon, of course, Seoul, and one of the most beautiful ones that I encountered was this one. That's really a rip-off of Amsterdam. This was a beautiful Indonesian little village. I visited Java 2 years ago. Way up until Eastern Java, I came in the little village of Ambarawa, and there I saw this beautiful city brand as well. So branding, marketing, of course, beautiful, but it's not about logos. It's about finding your DNA and telling the right messages to the right target audience at the right moment. So with our DNA of innovation, creativity, and that spirit of commerce, we tell stories, beautiful stories, qualitative stories about the city. Just to give you some examples. This is how Rembrandt dealt with light. Rembrandt, one of the world-known famous artists, painters, already back then in the days when he painted, he was very commercial. His spirit of commerce was really exceptional. So it's an example for us to show the DNA of Amsterdam. The world's biggest clubbing festival, attracting over 400,000 visitors to the city. Yes, it's about creativity, it's about clubbing, going out, but it's also about doing business. 20,000 people just visit this event to do business. Maybe not people with ties in suits, but these are DJs, bookers, record labels, agencies, all visiting Amsterdam Dance event just to do business. 20,000 people. Imagine what it means for the city when these people visit a full week and spend lots of money, but also go into the city in many ways in many neighborhoods. So with this DNA, with these stories, and with our target groups, our task was back then to put Amsterdam back on the map again. This was in the period of 2010 up until 2015, I'm talking about right now. And we went all over the world. These were the days. We got more money from the city hall to do marketing and branding. I visited New York, China, Russia, everywhere where we went. We created these stories about the city. We built alliances with many airlines. We built alliances with tour operators. And basically, it gave us huge success, which I want to show you with one little video.
Doesn't work.
It should, or not.
Sorry.
Okay. I think I'm going to skip the video. But I will make sure with Ludo that I will send the presentation in the right format later on, so it will be available online for you all, and you can show the video. Basically, it's a video about marketing and branding Amsterdam in a new way that we launched in 2010, and there was a successful alliance with KLM, our National Board of Tourism, but also with Schiphol Airport and our national government. Together with this, we had a huge investment in our press and influencer marketing assets. We organized back then about 10 to 12 press trips annually, but also it was about a cooperation of all our partners within the city. We nowadays work for 1,100 partners within the city and the metropolitan area. These are theaters, museums, restaurants, hotels, shop owners, but also corporates like KLM, Heineken, Schiphol Airport, etc. So together with all these partners, we got lots of contributions from them financially, but also regarding their capacities. So when Obama visited the city, we organized a program for his delegation to also go to the Van Gogh, to also go to the Rijksmuseum. And of course, with all this power, we created huge potential and huge free publicity for the city. If we look towards today, so with all the success, with all the rise of the city, we can see Amsterdam is exceeding basically the annual increase of tourism within the Netherlands, as you can see in this graph. If we look into these numbers nowadays, it's about 19 million people visiting the city. 19 million people being divided into 7 million domestic visitors and 12 million international visitors. If I make a comparison with New York City attracts 16 million international visitors. So we only miss out on 4 million. But knowing that Amsterdam only has 850,000 inhabitants, that's quite a huge deal for such a small city. And the annual increase is between 6 and 8% every year. So a few years ago, we decided to cut down our budgets on international marketing and only invest on building reputation, guiding visitors in a smarter way, and preventing nuisance and optimizing the customer experience on the ground. Because it's not only about these 19 million people visiting the city in a year, it's also about 11,000 inhabitants more per year in Amsterdam, as you can see in the bottom left number. So it's not only about tourism causing this crowdedness, it's also about more people wanting to live in the city, which gives, of course, a huge effect on housing prices, etc. So basically, with success also comes challenges. And that's the reason why Amsterdam is now shifting from more international marketing to doing more marketing on the ground, basically within Amsterdam, to optimize the experience of visitors, but also to optimize the livability of our residents. And that's the theoretical part. I will just give you some examples how we do this and what we do for our citizens. Perhaps some of you who only now focus on tourists, visitors, would say, well, what do you do with your citizens? Why would you include them? And how do you organize this? Just to give you some examples, we think our citizens are the best and the main ambassadors of our city. If our ambassadors are not supporting tourism, if they are not aware of what's happening in the city, if they don't know where to go, if they don't embrace the new neighborhoods, then why should a visitor do so? In an increasing way, we see visitors coming to us and asking us, where do all the locals go? So everybody wants to be a local nowadays. If I go to Barcelona, I want to eat in a tapas place where all the Barcelonese people go to. And I'd like to feel authentic then, right? And a local. So that's one of the main reasons for us to include these citizens to our marketing scheme. We have our website, iamsterdam.com, in Dutch and English available. And all the cultural events there are listed also for our citizens, or primarily for our citizens, and translated into English for all our international visitors. We organize an event called 24 Hours. We organize it 3 times per year, just to show our citizens what's happening in their neighborhood. So we do it in 3 neighborhoods outside the city center, really upcoming neighborhoods. And we organize the program for 24 hours in a row. One event has about 40 to 50 sub-events, and it's only focusing on inhabitants to show them this is happening in your city, so they become more proud on their city and participate more in their city. In the end, so they can become better ambassadors. Looking towards business marketing, for us, the business side, as I mentioned in the beginning, the business twinkle, that was really missing out. When I was traveling abroad, everybody only was thinking about tourism, nice stuff to do, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll reputation that we had. But doing business in Amsterdam, really? Are people doing business there? Yes, we are. And that was for us the main reason to start with this research. What is the perception now about Amsterdam? And what we saw is that we would really need it to use these talking heads within the business sector for them to tell the story about doing business in Amsterdam, about creativity, innovation, and that spirit of commerce. So at this moment, as you can see in the top left, these are the talking heads, and we asked them to use the quotes to say why they do business in Amsterdam, and to create videos about this being distributed on our platforms, on our social media. So within our platforms, also these companies, these investors are targeted. So what we now can see is that all these stories are aligning, and it's again from that holistic perspective. To give you an example, a few years ago we started this campaign in London towards creative companies to show them the benefits of doing business and being located in Amsterdam. Of course, I have to say that the reason was a bit less happy with the Brexit happening, but for Amsterdam it can mean huge benefits. And we discovered that these companies in London were really considering moving towards Europe, but they weren't really looking for numbers or statistics or lists of where to do business in. They were looking for the right quality of life for their employees. So our main reason for Amsterdam to market ourselves on a business level was to focus on the quality of life in Amsterdam towards the quality of life in the UK and in London. So we used all these marketing materials for businesses only based on these levels. So for instance, night tube, well, in Amsterdam your bicycle runs 24 hours. Or in Amsterdam, where you always get home in time to read your daughter her bedtime story. Because you can bike your way within our city within 15 minutes from A to B.
10 minutes.
Going towards tourism. As I mentioned, it's about building reputation, guiding visitors in a smarter way, and preventing nuisance. I'll give you some examples. I'm going to skip this regarding the time, but just to show you how we cooperate with our municipality. City Hall is responsible for the rules and regulations, of course, in the city. So in the past years, they implemented new rules regarding Airbnb and private holiday rentals. Nowadays, you can only rent out your apartment if it's your own house, so not if you rent it, and you can only rent it out for 30 days. It's a maximum 4 persons, and you need permission from your homeowners association, and you have to pay the city tax, of course. So this is just to show you how the city is dealing with numbers of tourism coming into the city. Another example, now there is a ban on new tourist shops within the city center. So it's not allowed to start up a new tourist shop, a new souvenir shop, or a new shop selling only fast food towards tourists, just to protect the local companies and the local artisans. On a marketing and branding scheme, what do we do as a marketing organization? We try to show people what Amsterdam more has to offer than only the city center. I'm going to show you some examples. This is a map of Amsterdam. As you can see in the middle, the red dot, that's Amsterdam. And this is the Amsterdam area, as we call it nowadays. It's officially not part of Amsterdam or the municipality. But towards our international visitors, we portray it as being part of Amsterdam and the Amsterdam experience. This area is made up out of 32 municipalities. They all collaborate. They put in money in a big jar, €1 per inhabitant. And from this big jar, we do many activities regarding mobility, regarding infrastructure, but also regarding marketing and branding. From this big jar, we create the marketing campaign to guide visitors, international visitors, also towards these places. Like I mentioned, the beach of Amsterdam, but also this part up north of Amsterdam, what we now call Old Holland. Old Holland, where you can really see windmills, cheese markets, old Dutch fisher villages. But south of Amsterdam, a place where we call now Flowers of Holland, with the biggest flower auction of the world, but also with the Keukenhof, with all the flower fields. And as I mentioned, Amsterdam Beach. Only 25 minutes away, accessible by train. So how to market that? Basically, we follow the customer journey. So when people orientate, we also influence the image of Amsterdam when they search for Amsterdam or Amsterdam activities. When they come on our website, when they enter Schiphol Airport, when they go to our visitor centers, we have to make it easy for them to also travel towards those areas. So we created this public transport card that gives you entrance to 5 different public transport companies. It used to be that you needed to buy 5 different cards. As an international visitor, you would be fed up, right? You have to research it all on your own, you have to look it up, you're getting lost. So you have to make it easy for your customers as well to really go and to visit these places. Up until now, we see that about 25% of all our international visitors that come to Amsterdam, they also visit the Amsterdam area during their stay in Amsterdam. So it's an increase of about 7% in 7 years. You can say that's not a lot, but if you look into the absolute numbers, in 2011 we had 8 million international visitors, and now we have about 12 million international visitors. So if you're adding up the numbers, a lot more people visit the Amsterdam area. So we use the popularity of the city to create better impact for the other municipalities, basically. Another example, we have our iAmsterdam city card, including many museums and attractions, not only in the city, but again, also in the metropolitan area of Amsterdam. And there's an additional public transport card with it. So it gives you free public transport, free entrance to museums, and free kennel tour. So basically, this is our one-stop shop product, giving people allowance and making it more easy for them to travel to those other places. But it also gives us data, because every time somebody checks in with the card at an attraction or in a museum or in public transport, we know where they are going, we know how long they stayed, where they are going after. So basically we can create these profiles of our city card. And it also gives us data about the crowdedness in the city. And by using that data, we can again show it to the customers, because they don't want to wait 4 hours in a queue at the Van Gogh Museum. Now we know that 90% of all the people that go to the Van Gogh Museum, they want to go at 11 in the morning. Well, that's pretty crowded, I can tell you. So the Van Gogh transformed now into a time slot ticket method. And you could say, well, that's not a very spontaneous way of traveling, of experience the city, but it gives a better customer experience. One of the last slides I want to talk to you about is our quality visitor. And when I see these groups in the city, I think we still have a job to do. Talking about a bad reputation.
I've heard that now you send them to Budapest.
Well, are there people from Budapest here? No. No, but of course, we still attract guys like this. I have to be honest. We do see an increase of people stating they are only visiting the city for cultural reasons and less for boozing, clubbing, partying, etc. But still, a small minority of our international visitors are just visiting the city to drink, to party. We did a research about this topic because we saw an increase of complaints of people living in the city center. They were complaining about people peeing in the streets, on their doorstep, about people littering, making too much noise, being drunk all the time. We found out, interviewing police, law enforcers, companies in the city center, but mainly the inhabitants in the city center, that the majority of these complaints were caused by younger males between 18 and 35 coming from other parts of Holland or from the UK. I'm still friends with the ambassador of the UK, by the way, so he knows that we did this project. I included him in our project. But we found out these guys, they have a bad reputation about the city. They still think everything is possible in the city. So what we found out with our data team, okay, these guys are between 18 and 35. We know how they search when they when they come to Amsterdam. They use search terms like pub crawl Amsterdam, boozing Amsterdam, cheap flights Amsterdam. So we created a campaign focusing on these 4 situations of nuisance and showing them that even though they are welcome in the city, they still should be aware that even in Amsterdam, there are boundaries and you should behave just to protect the livability of our inhabitants. So we created a campaign following their customer journey. So when these guys Google on cheap flights Amsterdam, and they are still back home in Newcastle or in Manchester, they will see this campaign popping up in their browsers. If they enter their airport on Newcastle, Manchester, or Birmingham, they will see the campaign because it's focused on their schedule, their travel schedule. We added marketing, communications in our accommodations because we know from our statistics these guys visit the 0 to 2-star hotels in Amsterdam. When they enter the city center, oops, oh man, there are some slides missing. I have to improvise. When they enter the city center, we have digital screens in the city center telling them the rules and regulations within the city, but not the full week, only on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night when they enter the city center. And lastly, when they visit that city center, we use geofencing, a tool with which we can put a digital fence around a certain area in the city. And when these guys enter that part of the city, the communication, the campaign will pop up in their timeline on social media again. So, learnings for Amsterdam within 15 years. Look at it from a holistic perspective. Tourism shouldn't be the end goal. It should be a thing that you can use to create that end goal. For us, the end goal is to create a city that's livable, lovable, and prosperous for everybody, for your inhabitants, visitors, and businesses. Think about quantity versus quality. What is your KPI? Is it only about quantity, more bed nights? Or again, is that just a way to accomplish your end goal? We saw that the usage and the implementation of thick data is really, really important, not only to target better, but basically to create better ambitions. And the end, of course, cooperate. We cannot build the reputation of Amsterdam alone. We need our partners, we need our inhabitants, we need other platforms. That's why we cooperate with 1,100 partners in the full Amsterdam area. So everything for a lovable, and prosperous city for all. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks a lot, Nico. As I said before, you will have an hour at 11:30 to go further, to go deeper with the focus workshop en salle Lautréamont, niveau -1, à 11h30, si vous voulez en savoir plus sur Amsterdam et sur sa stratégie. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thank you. See you in half an hour.